Hello and welcome back to Waveform Science. I am, as always, your host, Jeff Hagan. It is June of 2025. The Apex 300 pre-order from Bluetti is in process. The first set of units have shipped but have not yet been delivered. And it's time to take a look at one of the accessories that's being launched at the same time. This device works with the Apex 300, of course, and also, by the way, other devices, including, interestingly, third-party devices. I am, of course, talking about the gigantic external solar controller, the SolarX 4K, huge thing. This isn't going to be so much synthetic testing as I usually do because my test equipment just isn't big enough to max this out. So we're instead going to be hooking this up to actual real solar panels out in the sun and seeing how it performs there. So your mileage may vary on exact reproducibility of these experiments. And of course, first I'm going to show you how to hook it up. My standard disclaimer, by the way, I'm not paid to make these videos. They do send me the prototype unit. By the way, a prototype, not a retail unit here. But they don't give me cash and they don't get to look at the video before I release it publicly. So Bluetti can't tell me what to say. And if they did, I wouldn't make the videos. And they can't tell me what not to say, and they don't get to look at it before it goes public. So hopefully that makes it fairly objective. Let's take a look at this and see how it behaves. According to my scale, SolarX 4K weighs in at 16.5 pounds. Tape measure tells me 16 inches by 11 inches. Maybe about 4 inches thick, roughly. The manufacturer says 11.35 by 18.66 by 3.55 inches, which honestly is a little bit different than what I just measured. So this is a prototype unit and it's a pre-release manual, so that doesn't surprise me too much. But it's a big unit. For reference, here's a SolarX 4K with a DC charging enhancer, the prior generation of this. This can be 4 of these in the same amount of space. Of course, 4 of these would be 2,000 watts, and this is 4,000 watts, so the new one is more space efficient. The new one really is designed to be wall mounted, by the way. It's got these little tabs on the bottom here to wall mount, and you'll actually have to punch these little things out when you go to install it. But we'll take a look at that in just a moment. All right, what comes with it in the box? You get, of course, the SolarX 4K itself. You get a connector, fits into one of these holes down here. You get 4 wood screw style mounting screws right there. You get the grounding connector. You get a Allen key, which you're going to need. And of course, there's the actual cable connector, which this particular one has the P090D battery port, which Bluetti uses on pretty much everything they make, going back to the AC200 Max. And the other side simply has raw wire connectors on it, and of course a network jack, which is always interesting. This secondary cable here, by the way, doesn't actually come with the SolarX 4K. It's a separate order. I understand they are bundling these in so that when you buy the SolarX 4K, it'll come with at least 1 cable. But there is going to be multiple varieties of different cables that can be ordered. For the test unit, this is the only cable I have, so we're going to be using that one. This is the first, and by the way, only Bluetti device that I'm aware of that you actually have to take the screws out to get the thing together. So yeah, that's why it comes with an Allen key here. So there's 4 little screws on the side here. And we need to actually remove these screws in order to get the front cover off, which you will need to get the front cover off in order to put the cables in. So let's get these screws out here. If you have a better tool than this little Allen key to take the screws out, like say a ratcheting Allen key set, that would actually be a much better idea. It's easier to get those out with a better tool. Let's take a look inside and see what's in there. All right, taking the front cover off, we have a sticker that shows you how to hook things up. And pretty much everything else is closed, mostly because this box was designed to be opened by the users here. We've got 2 screw type terminals here for battery plus and battery minus. We've got 2 more for PV plus and PV minus. We've got 2 ports, CAN 1 and CAN 2. That's for the CAN bus connectors, which we're going to need in a few minutes. And several points where you can use to ground the device, which we're going to want to use at least one of those. In order to hook this up, the very first thing you're going to have to do is make your solar extension lead, because unlike the Charger 1, this doesn't come with one in the box, so you got to make one. So what do you need for this? Or at least the prototype unit didn't. I don't know, maybe the production models will. This is a 10 gauge wire spool, just zip tie line. You can use solar line too if this thing's mounted outdoors. By the way, it's not water rated, so don't mount it in the rain. But I'm just going to use zip line here because I'm going to be bench testing it. You're going to need a couple MC4 connectors, one of each. You'll need a couple of MC4 inner parts. You'll need the ferrule connectors. These are the same as what Charger 1 needs, by the way. So if you happen to buy the Charger 1 and you've got some extra connectors laying around, that's the same thing. You'll need a wire cutter, you'll need a crimper for the ferrules, and you'll need a crimper for the MC4 connectors. So let's get this wire put together. When you're assembling this, by the way, you do need to know which side is which. In this case, this is coming from a solar panel. Going to a solar panel is reverse, but the positive lead has the more square-looking connector on the end. All right, assuming you have all the parts you need to make it, you'll soon have one of these. These on one side, these on the other. It took me, I don't know, maybe about 5 minutes to make this, plus or minus. That's assuming I have the tools and I've done this before. So I would schedule, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes if you've never done this before, but it's really not hard to make one of these things. You just need the right parts. The next step in putting this together is to actually punch out the little electrical punch outs here. There are 2 in order to feed the wires through the bottom of the case into the case. You actually have to remove these little bits of metal here. As you can see, these are extremely easy to get out. No tools needed, just push with your thumb, they come right out. All right, the next step is going to be to actually install the wire here. You're going to need a little tiny screwdriver, but before that you'll need to put the actual wire holder in. Now this is going to be too big for the cable that I just made, because this is sized for exterior wire, which mine is not. So how do you put this in? Well, you take this little thing off the back, put it in here, screw this in. There we go. And just sort of leave that open for a second. I'm going to put this cable in through here before I tighten it down. And now I've got over here a plus and a minus that needs to go into the right side. And of course these are too closed for me to get that in there. The next step is this giant wire, which goes through the other hole here. So same as the other one, we're going to actually just take this piece off down to the bottom. That'll allow us to put this through. That piece goes through. All 3 of these goes in there. Pull these out of the way here so they're not in your way. And I'm going to have to take the Velcro off. By the way, when you're working with these plastic fittings here, only ever tighten by hand. If you tighten this with a machine, you're going to be unhappy. And then we've got this plug here, which the instruction says goes into CAN 1. There we go. Now, at least according to the instruction manual, this is assembled. So now I can put the cover back on. And we are assembled. So we've got a solar input and we've got an output that connects to a battery. Now, some of you may notice that I did not hook up the grounding point. If you're going to be installing this permanently, yes, you do need to ground your device. I'm going to be bench testing this. I'm going to be bench testing it for less than 24 hours. Then I'm going to be unhooking it. And I don't have that great of a point on my workbench here to hook up to ground. So I neglected to do that. And if I get zapped, that's on me. My recommendation to you guys, hook up the grounding point before you install this thing permanently. What do we need to make the SolarX 4K function beyond actually setting it up? Of course, we need a solar generator to plug it into. We're going to use an Apex 300 right here, and yes, I am going to drain the battery before we do that tomorrow. You'll need a solar connector. This actually goes to, by the way, another solar power on-off switch, but this is going to go to a solar array that in the morning, because it's not morning right now, so we're not going to test it right now, in the morning we will have actual power coming into this. That needs to go into a shutoff switch. So I already have a shutoff switch. This is somewhat redundant for me, but I'm going to leave it here because you guys need to make sure you have one, because the Solar 4K itself doesn't have one built in. So you definitely need a disconnect switch. So what am I using here? This is the Amazon Special. It is 25 amp up to 400 volts. My solar array is nowhere near 400 volts, so that's fine for me. But if you are running a 500 volt solar array, be aware you're going to need a bigger one than the one that I have. You'll also need the actual connector of the SolarX 4K here actually hooked up to the solar generator in order to get it to function properly. So let's wait till morning. I'll drain the battery overnight, and then we're going to test it and see what it does. It is now the next morning. My experimental setup here. This is actually local time, 10:23 a.m. I have the Apex 300 and a B300K battery sitting here. By the way, I have drained this last night almost completely to zero. Not all the way to zero, but very, very close to zero. I think 1% is what I have left in here. I've got the SolarX 4K hooked up. My solar leads have a switch on it here. This is a 25 amp 400 volt rated DC circuit breaker, because you want to have a way to turn the solar off. This doesn't actually have a way internally to do that. This lead here is going to be running to my solar panels right here. And by the way, I have another switch for these solar panels underneath the table here. So first off, my solar panels are on. Let's make sure there's voltage coming out of them. This is, by the way, 2 arrays that were set up for the AC 500. I simply put the 2 arrays, which are identical, in series with each other, and we're getting 225 volts out of this. Very nice. That is well within the range that we need for this solar controller. I'm going to turn the solar switch off down here. Always a good idea to turn it off when you're plugging in cables. Let's plug that in. Very good. I'm going to turn this back on down here. And then I'm going to flip this switch right here and we'll see if it wakes up. Okay, the fan spun up for a second. This is powered up. The main unit's powered up. 2% battery. So yeah, a little bit more than I thought. And it's not charging. And everybody who buys one of these is going to find, oh my goodness, it's not charging. Well, that's because we haven't gone into the app to set it up yet. So let us connect to it in the app. So down here we have this thing that says components. Tap on that, go into the Solar 4K right here. And it says error. Well, we got to tap on it. So we tap here, say set up. Notice how by default, by the way, it's turned off. So we actually have to turn it on. I don't know why the default is turned off, but it is what it is. So when you turn it on, it's going to have a fan kick on, which just happened down here. And now, 1200 watts of solar coming in. 1300 watts. By the way, these are off real solar panels. The array this is hooked up to is about 2700 watts. But it's, you know, 10:30 in the morning. We're not going to get peak off of this thing yet. We're not going to get, it's going to be a couple hours actually before we get peak off of this thing. So let's take a look at what else we have in the app. So we've got max charging current 40 amps. You can actually turn this down if you're using a different connector. So I can do 40 amps to 55 amps. You can actually turn it up even higher if you want to. You can set it up to 75 amps as high as you want. Now, what's the limitation here? Well, it depends on which cable you're using. And the unit doesn't know how to tell which cable. As we saw earlier, there's no cable selector inside the device. So 40 amps is a reasonable maximum. It's going to be, what is it, 60 volts here is the maximum this is going to output. So 60 times 40, yeah, that's a good number. It's way more than 2000 watts. So I'm just going to leave this as the default for this test. So I think that's what most people are going to do. You actually can turn it up if you need higher amperage here. Charging mode, energy supplied to battery versus solar charging. You can pick which one you've got. I've got it hooked up to energy supplied to battery because that's the cable I'm using. Adaptive mode, turn it on or turn it off. And what adaptive mode says it does is it automatically controls the charging switch and adjusts output. So it's going to make it turn off at night, I think. I'm going to turn that on. See what that does. Oh, it doesn't do anything, probably because it's already turned on. Oh, whatever. We'll leave it off for this test. Changes up saved. It's okay. There we go. So now it's charging. I still have an error here? Nope, it's just showing an error for some reason. Not sure why. So how do you actually see your input in the app itself? Well, you tap on PV like you normally would. And this PV number 3 here that I actually showed in my earlier video, PV3 is the SolarX. So PV1 and PV2 are the ports built onto the side of the device. 3 is the one on the SolarX itself. So it seems to be working. So let's let it sit. We should, in theory, be able to get enough energy to recharge this completely dead to completely full in a single day. So let me switch over to a time lapse and we will do that. It is definitely not the best solar day out here for a test. You can see up here we've got all kinds of haze in the sky. This is from the fires that are going on in Canada. So it's a reasonable solar day. You know, there's not any clouds, but it's kind of hazy. So, is what it is. I am standing outside right next to my solar array. There's the array. Got a nice sunny spot here. Let's take a look at the solar conditions. This is a luminosity meter, so it's going to read out how strong the sun is. Standard test conditions is 1,000 watts per meter squared. I am getting about 800 to right about 900 watts per meter squared out of this meter here, which means we're actually operating with a little bit less sun than what is considered standard test conditions. So at this point, I would not expect to get full power out of the solar array itself. We've now been charging for a few hours. We're at 86%. It is continuing to charge at 1400 watts due to solar conditions. The fan on the SolarX 4K has kicked on. Let's see how loud it is. I've got my sound meter here. About 54-ish, 53-ish decibels. When I'm talking, it goes up to 60. So it's quieter than my internal talking voice that I'm using on the microphone here. But it is noticeably noisy, meaning you probably want to put this right next to your bed while you're trying to sleep. But it's a relatively high-powered solar controller, so it may make some noise. I think this thing is intended to be mounted on the wall somewhere in a garage or something, not right next to where you're sleeping. So let's let it keep charging here. All right, so we have reached 100%. We have fully charged the Apex 300 from 0 to 100% on kind of a meh solar day using the SolarX 4K. So yeah, it does actually work. Now let's drain the battery a bit here, and then we'll try it again with a different solar generator, because one of the selling points of this is really that it can work with different devices. Next up, I've got it connected to an AC300, the prior generation device. I have drained the battery down to about 60%, and my solar switch here is turned off right now. Let's go ahead and turn this on, just with the switch. And I'll turn the AC output on. Got nothing plugged into it, but just like to have something on. Very good. Now, let's take a look at it. So if I flip the switch to turn on the solar, what happens on the AC300? Nothing. Fan kicks on the SolarX, but it's not displaying charging at all on the screen of the AC300. Well, why not? Well, the older units don't know how to communicate to the SolarX directly to show the charging on the screen. meaning you instead have to connect to it in the app. If you connect the SolarX 4K directly to an an Apex 300, it doesn't show up as a standalone device, meaning you can't just add it to your list of devices. But if it is connected to something else, it actually shows up instead as a device you can connect to. And you can see here that it is in fact recharging the battery, but it's just not showing up on the AC300. The AC300 has no idea it's connected because it's an older device. I mean, they basically had to retrofit it back in to make it be able to talk to these older things. So yes, it does actually charge, it just doesn't show you that it's charging. So that's the thing. Another thing to point out, by the way, notice the little battery lights down here. These are not blinking charging. So the battery doesn't know it's charging either, but it is charging. You just can't see it. We have about reached the end of our solar day for today. We have gotten this one up to 92% from 60%, and we have fully recharged an Apex 300 plus an external B300K battery from 0 to 100% in a single day. So yeah, that's actually not bad at all considering how non-optimal the solar panels were acting today. We have now run through all the tests that I'm able to run on the SolarX 4K device, and by the way, it is the end of July. If you remember the beginning of the video, I said it was June. In fact, it's over a month to make this thing. So why did it take over a month to make this, and why do I have less tests than usual? Well, very simple. The device itself is a prototype. The SolarX 4K that they sent me was not completely ready, and prototype means functions don't work. That's what it means. It means some stuff in there doesn't work. And by the way, I knew this going in. They told me before they even sent it to me that it was going to be a prototype device, so no issue there. What couldn't I test? Well, I couldn't max it out. You guys notice I didn't do a test where I showed 4,000 watts flowing into either the battery or on either of the two solar generators we tested. Why didn't I do that? Well, two reasons. One, the prototype doesn't actually support the full 4,000 watts. So nothing I can do about that. But two, I don't have a high enough voltage solar array or a high enough voltage DC power supply to actually make that test work. So you'd need somewhere around 275 to 300 volts, somewhere in that range to actually max it out. And my solar array just isn't big enough for that, so I can't max it out dynamically. And my DC power supply only goes up to 200 volts, so I couldn't show that one. The other one I couldn't show that I really wanted to show was the multi-head capability. Bluetti has a secondary cable for the Apex 300. By the way, this cable right here, it's got 3 XT60s on one side and bare wires on the other side. That will allow you to use one SolarX 4K into 3 different Apex 300 head units. So that means that if you have a set of 3 Apex 300s going into the hub, the parallel hub that they have, this would allow you to use one SolarX 4K to recharge all 3 of them. So that's actually a pretty cool use case. Unfortunately, the prototype doesn't support the necessary hardware in order to make that function work. So I wasn't able to demo it. I do have the cable to show that it will exist, and it's in the manual, so you guys can see it. So that's going to be good. The other thing that's going to get fixed, a lot of the bugs that I ran into because this was a prototype, I did some basically free QA work for Bluetti, and they got a lot of fixes out of me. So you guys are going to have a better day one launch experience because I've already found all the issues. So you're welcome. Enjoy. The other thing that's going to change is the app is going to look a little bit different from what you guys saw in this video. So when you do get your SolarX 4K, be aware the app's going to be reworked. It's going to be more streamlined. It's going to be easier to get to some of the functions. The places that I showed it to you were a little weird. So they're fixing all that stuff. So when you do get it, it's going to be better than what I'm showing today. But even what I have now works fine with 2 different solar generators. You saw it on the AC300 and the Apex 300, even the previous generation device. It worked fine. It recharged it. It does control solar. It does do the job. So I think folks are going to be pretty happy with it. And the pricing is pretty reasonable. As a final note, as always, I am not paid to make these videos. They do send me the product. Of course, this one is even a prototype, a pre-release prototype that is not fully functional. But, you know, if they didn't send it to me, how would I get it? But I don't get cash from Bluetti. They don't pay me. In this case, I don't even get free stuff because it's a prototype. I make these because they're fun to make, really. That's what it comes down to, is I enjoy making these and folks enjoy watching them, and I like going through the technical details of how all this stuff works, because I really enjoy being on the bleeding edge. So that's where the videos come from. The purpose here isn't to make an advertisement for Bluetti, even though it kind of sort of is. But, you know, I enjoy making them. They're fun. And as long as folks enjoy watching them, I'll keep making them. So thank you all for watching.